Today, we will discuss the story of a soldier who went to war and was never seen again. History recorded him as missing, while his family waited for answers for decades. In this story, we will uncover the truth that he did not die on the battlefield. We will explore how he survived but never returned home. And by the end, we will understand the painful sacrifice that defined his entire life. The morning he left for war was quieter than anyone expected. There were no cheering crowds, only heavy air and unspoken fear. He stood at the doorway of his small home, adjusting his uniform again and again. His wife watched him closely, memorizing his face without realizing it. Their child slept inside, too young to understand what goodbye meant. He promised he would return before the seasons changed. She smiled, even though her eyes were already full of tears. The train station was crowded with soldiers, all pretending to be brave. He hugged his wife one last time and felt her hands trembling. When the train moved, he did not look back because he feared he might never stop. The war consumed him faster than he imagined. Days blurred into nights filled with gunfire and fear. Letters from home became his only comfort. He read them repeatedly, even when the paper began to tear. In every letter, his wife asked the same question: "When will you come home?" He always replied with hope, even when hope was fading. The battlefield showed him things he would never forget. He watched friends fall beside him without warning. Every loss carved silence into his heart. One night, during a violent attack, everything changed. Explosions lit the sky as chaos swallowed the camp. He was thrown to the ground and felt a sharp pain across his body. When he opened his eyes, the battlefield was empty and burning. No familiar faces remained around him. He tried to stand, but collapsed again. Hours passed before anyone found him. He was carried away by strangers whose language he barely understood. The war moved on without him. Official records marked him as missing in action. Back home, the letter arrived weeks later. His wife read it slowly, unable to breathe. The words "missing and unknown fate" haunted her nights. She refused to believe he was gone. Every knock on the door made her heart race. Every sound outside felt like his footsteps returning. Days turned into months of waiting. The child learned to walk without his father's hands. Photographs became memories instead of comfort. Neighbors whispered condolences she did not accept. Meanwhile, the soldier slowly recovered in a distant place. His body healed faster than his mind. He asked repeatedly to be sent home. No one had answers for him. His identity was questioned, his records lost. The world he knew felt unreachable. He realized he was officially dead to his own country. At night, he dreamed of his wife's voice calling him. Guilt began to grow heavier than his injuries. He feared what his return might bring. Rumors of accusations and punishment reached him. He was told returning could place his family in danger. Fear mixed with love inside him. He faced a choice no soldier should ever face. Go home and risk destroying the people he loved, or stay silent and let history forget him. He began writing in a small diary. Every page carried words he could never send. He wrote about his child growing up without him. He wrote about his wife waiting by the window. Each sentence ended with pain. Back home, years passed slowly. His wife aged through seasons of waiting. Hope became routine instead of belief. The child asked questions she could not answer. Official silence became the final response. The soldier read old letters until they faded. He wondered if being alive was a punishment. His name disappeared from conversations. History moved forward without him. He watched from a distance, unseen and forgotten. Love kept him alive, yet kept him away. The diary grew thicker with untold truth. He promised himself one thing: someday, the truth would be known. But that day would not be now. He chose silence again and again. Every choice cut deeper than the last. Time turned his absence into legend. His family learned to survive without answers. The war ended, but his story did not. He remained a ghost in official records. The world believed his story was finished, but it was only beginning. A secret was forming quietly across years, one that would change everything, one that would explain his disappearance, one that would break hearts decades later. The soldier was alive, and the cost of that truth was only starting to be paid. The years continued to pass, each one heavier than the last. The soldier built a quiet life far from the place he once called home. He worked simple jobs, never staying anywhere too long. Every new place reminded him that he belonged nowhere. At night, he still opened his diary and wrote in silence. The diary became his only witness. He wrote about the war ending without him. He wrote about medals given to others. His name was never spoken. Back home, his wife learned to live with uncertainty. She stopped waiting at the door but never stopped hoping. Her hair slowly turned grey. The child grew into a teenager with unanswered questions. "Was my father brave?" the child once asked. She could only say yes and look away. Every year, she visited the memorial with missing names. She traced his name with her fingers. It felt cold, like stone instead of memory. The soldier heard rumors about his homeland from strangers. He learned that his wife had never remarried. The news filled him with pride and shame. He wondered if his silence was a form of betrayal. Yet fear always stopped him. He had been warned that returning could reopen wounds. Officials once questioned his loyalty. They hinted that his survival could be seen as desertion. The thought of his family suffering because of him terrified him. So he stayed hidden. He aged quietly, watching life move forward without him. The diary pages grew yellow. His handwriting became slower and shakier. Each word carried regret. Meanwhile, his wife faced a different battle. Society pressured her to move on. Friends gently suggested letting go. She never did. She kept his uniform folded carefully. She kept his letters in a wooden box. She spoke to his photograph when nights grew long. The child eventually left home. Life demanded independence. Still, the absence followed like a shadow. The soldier imagined these moments vividly. He imagined birthdays he missed. He imagined conversations that never happened. Each imagined moment hurt more than the last. Once, he almost returned. He stood at a border, heart pounding. One step forward could change everything. Fear pushed him back. He turned away with tears in his eyes. That night, he wrote the longest diary entry of his life. He apologized to his wife on every page. He apologized to his child for his absence. He blamed the war. He blamed himself more. Time erased his strength. Illness began to visit him more often. Doctors spoke in careful tones. He understood what they meant. His life was slowly nearing its end. The thought filled him with urgency. He realized silence could not last forever. Truth demanded to be released. He began writing a final letter. This letter was different. It carried no fear. It carried only honesty. He explained everything he had hidden. He explained why he stayed away. He explained his endless love. He sealed the letter with shaking hands. He addressed it to his wife. He did not know if she was still alive. That uncertainty broke him. He trusted fate to finish what he could not. He hid the letter with the diary. He left instructions with someone he trusted. Soon after, his body finally gave up. He died far from home. No ceremony marked his passing. No flag covered his body. He passed as he lived, quietly. But his story was not over. The diary still existed. The letter still waited. Decades of silence were about to end. Truth was moving closer to home. The past was preparing to speak, and someone was finally going to listen. Many years after the war, the world looked completely different. Old buildings were replaced, and memories faded with time. The soldier's wife was now elderly and fragile. Her hands trembled as she moved through familiar rooms. The house still carried his presence in quiet corners. One afternoon, a visitor arrived unexpectedly. He carried a small package and a serious expression. He explained that he was fulfilling a promise made long ago. She listened politely, unsure of what he meant. When he placed the diary on the table, her breath stopped. She recognized the handwriting instantly. Her heart began to race as if time reversed itself. Tears blurred her vision before she opened the first page. The words felt alive. Every sentence confirmed what she had always believed. He had survived, he had lived, and he had loved her endlessly. She read 4 hours without moving. The diary told a story history never recorded. It spoke of fear, sacrifice, and impossible choices. Each page explained his silence. Each page carried pain. Her tears fell onto the paper. She reached the final letter with shaking hands. Her name was written carefully on the envelope. She held it against her chest before opening it. The letter apologized for a lifetime of absence. It explained the danger he believed his return could bring. It spoke of watching from afar. It spoke of loving her in silence. It spoke of regret that never faded. She whispered his name again and again. Outside, the world remained unaware. Inside, decades of pain finally had a voice. The letter ended with a final request. He asked her to forgive him. He asked her to remember him kindly. She pressed the letter to her lips. Forgiveness came instantly. Regret stayed. Love remained stronger than both. Days later, she called her child home. The diary was placed carefully between them. The child listened in disbelief. Anger appeared before understanding. Tears followed quickly after. Questions filled the room. Answers came slowly. The truth reshaped a lifetime of memories. The missing father became real again. His absence finally had meaning. The child realized silence had been his protection. That realization hurt deeply. Together, they decided to share the truth. Historians were contacted. Records were reopened. Files long forgotten were examined again. The soldier's name resurfaced. Officials admitted mistakes. History corrected itself too late. A quiet acknowledgement replaced decades of absence. No apology could restore lost years. Recognition arrived when it no longer mattered. The wife listened as his story was told publicly. She felt both pride and sadness. The child stood beside her, holding her hand. The world finally knew his sacrifice, but the cost had already been paid. That night, the wife slept holding the diary. Her breathing was slow and calm. Love surrounded her final moments. She passed peacefully before dawn. The diary rested beside her. Father and mother reunited in silence. The child mourned with understanding instead of confusion. Grief felt different now. It felt complete. The story spread quietly through time. It became a lesson of sacrifice, a lesson of love, a lesson of painful choices. Still, one part remained unfinished. One truth remained unspoken. The soldier's final wish was still waiting. A wish written between the last lines. It asked for remembrance, not honor. It asked for understanding, not praise, and it prepared the heart for goodbye. After the funeral, the house felt quieter than ever before. The child walked through the rooms where waiting had once lived. Dust rested gently on old photographs and forgotten corners. The diary lay open on the table, its pages now familiar. Each word carried the weight of 2 lifetimes. The child realized how silence had shaped their existence. Anger slowly transformed into understanding. Understanding transformed into sorrow. And sorrow transformed into respect. The soldier's final wish echoed in every line. He never wanted praise. He only wanted his love to be known. The child decided to honor that wish quietly. No grand ceremonies were planned. No public speeches were made. Instead, a simple visit was arranged. The child traveled to the land where the soldier was buried. The grave was small and unmarked. Grass had grown freely around it. Kneeling there felt like meeting a stranger and a father at once. The child spoke softly, unsure of the right words. Stories were shared that the soldier never heard. Apologies were spoken that came decades too late. Tears fell without shame. For the first time, the child felt seen. The soldier's absence finally made sense. Love had guided his disappearance. Fear had sealed it. Sacrifice had defined it. The diary was buried beside him. It felt like returning his voice at last. The wind moved gently, as if listening. The child whispered goodbye, not with anger, but with peace. Back home, life slowly continued. The house was eventually sold. The photographs were carefully packed away. Memories became lighter to carry. Years passed quietly again. The story of the missing soldier spread slowly. Some called him a hero. Others questioned his choices. The child accepted both. Truth rarely feels simple. What mattered was love. Love had survived war. Love had survived silence. Love had survived time itself. On certain nights, the child still reread copies of his words. They no longer hurt as before. They felt like guidance. The soldier's life became a lesson passed down gently. A reminder that survival can be painful. A reminder that sacrifice often goes unseen. History books eventually mentioned his name. It appeared briefly, without emotion. But his real story lived elsewhere. It lived in hearts, not pages. The child grew old, carrying both pride and grief. In quiet moments, the soldier was finally forgiven completely, not because he returned, but because he loved until the end. One evening, as the sun set softly, the child felt calm. Memories no longer demanded answers. They simply existed. The promise made long ago was finally fulfilled. The truth had come home. The waiting had ended. To lives separated by war were finally understood. Silence no longer controlled the past. Love had spoken, and it had been heard. The soldier was no longer missing. He was no longer forgotten. He existed where it mattered most. In memory, in forgiveness, in quiet understanding. The war took his return. Fear took his voice. Time took his chance. But love never left him. It waited patiently across decades. It survived every loss. And in the end, it told his story. Not loudly, not proudly, but honestly. The soldier never came home. Yet somehow, he finally did.